Hey guys, welcome to the Self Started Podcast. I'm your host, Alex,
I'm your host, Mahim.
and today we have a special guest for you, Google software engineer, Dan Harel. Dan, how's it going?
Good. How are you? I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you.
We are.
So, Dan, before we hop right into it, can you tell us more about yourself and kind of what you do?
What do I do? That's a great question. My boss asks me that all the time. Uh, yeah. No, so like Alex mentioned, I'm a software engineer at Google. Specifically, I'm at YouTube, Trust and Safety. I'm on the data engineering team. So really what that means, what I do is we collect data from the rest of Trust and Safety, from the rest of the org. We we store it, we aggregate it, we clean it up, we have really high standards for data quality, and then we serve it back to the rest of Trust and Safety, rest of the org. Um, an example of that might be like creating a database that lets you query like how many videos were taken down, how many ISIS extremists videos were taken down in Q3, something like that.
That's a really oddly specific and kind of interesting statistic.
It's oddly specific, and we get asked that all the time. In fact, we have a quarterly transparency report where we detail like how good we are at taking down content at YouTube. And where does all that data come from? My team.
Oh, oh, so that that's like a very I'm assuming that's like a very controversial part of the YouTube company, right? Trust and safety, because you guys are taking down content, and I know that there is a lot of hubbub about what should and should not be taken down. Does that like affect your work?
So my work specifically, no. Because again, my team doesn't take down any videos. We don't enforce any of the policies. We just collect data about that. But you're right. The rest of
Okay.
the org does have issues with that. It's like if let's say I have a classifier and I'm taking videos down, um, something that's like borderline porn, should that be taken down? Should that be allowed? What policy does that fall under? How do you know if it's right? How do you know if it's wrong? What do you do if you're wrong? Should you be more lenient, more strict? A lot of questions need to be answered, and then in the end, no matter what you do, someone's gonna get upset.
Well,
So
yeah, you're taking down their hard work. Their
honestly,
hard work.
yeah, like it's tough. Like it,
Yeah.
it sucks because like YouTube kind of has this contract that like you can be on our platform, you can put stuff up as long as you follow our rules, and then you make a mistake or or like our classifier makes a mistake and your livelihood's down the drain, and that really sucks.
Damn. Wait,
Yeah.
that okay, all right. That is well, I think that's something we'll get more into in a little bit. But
Sure.
that's a great introduction into kind of what you do, and
Yeah.
uh I guess start off um I guess we want to kind of dive into your background and how you ended up at this at Google as a software engineer. So can you kind of go more about that and like kind of how what brought you to this point?
Yeah, sure. So it all started when I was 3 years old, actually.
Really?
Yeah, kind of. My first video game was Super Mario World, and I played that when I was 3 years old, and when I was about 12 years old, I learned you could mod it. You could literally like write hacks, like write code to modify the code of the game to make
Mhm.
Mario do cool different things. And that's how I got started coding actually when I was about 12 years old. And then, when you learn that you can turn that into a living, make money off of coding, that's how I got into coding in the first place. I'm extremely fortunate that I went to a high school that had a computer science program. I went to Stuyvesant High School. It's um, Programming was a required course. We had to do one semester. Now you
Mhm.
have to do 2 semesters. So when I came to Stony Brook for a computer science degree, I was well ahead of the curve. Not to brag, just literally that's the path I took. That's how I ended up there.
Yeah.
Um, I took a bunch of courses. Obviously, I had a bunch of internships. I did a bunch of hackathons, which helped me to get those internships. And then one day, I had a friend who was working at Google. I met him at Stony Brook, asked him for a referral. The combination of everything, my degree, my hackathons, my side projects, and on top of it all, the referral got me an interview at Google. I studied for the interviews. I did well enough. Someone thought I did well enough, and here I am.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So you've been doing it for so coding isn't just something that you picked up after college started. This is something that you've been into for more almost like a decade now.
That's right. Yeah, I actually never really thought of it like that. But yeah, it's been over a decade since I started coding.
Wow.
Just kind of, yeah.
Seasoned professional.
Something like that. I don't know. I mean, no. But if you saw it was literally like 10 lines of code, so I wouldn't call that professional. But it did put me on the right track.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So you mentioned beside your degree, you talked about hackathons, internships, side projects. Can you give us a little more detail into specific projects that you've worked on outside of school?
Yeah, so most of it, honestly, none of it was actually impressive. None of my side projects, at least, right? Most of the side projects I worked on were at hackathons, where you have 24, 48 hours to work on something. Like, you're not gonna make something good in that time. But the core, like the key factor there is that I'm going out of my way, outside of school to work on something, right? It's not like I was being forced to do it. I said, I want to do this. This is my interest. I'm gonna learn things I don't learn in school. So that's kind of the takeaway from that. If you're curious about what I actually worked on, what was the most impressive thing?
You
We
can plug
made an
your
app.
GitHub.
Sorry?
You can plug your GitHub.
Well, my GitHub, there's nothing. I haven't touched my GitHub in like 5 years. Don't we made an app where you type in, you would give it it would like have your location, so it'd pull up the weather for you, and it would tell you what to you would tell like, are you generally more cold or are you generally more warm? It'll tell you what to wear that day. Like, oh, it's 70 degrees, but you're a little on the warm side, like you personally. So like, just wear a t-shirt and shorts. You're good with that.
Gotcha. Interesting. Um, so for people who aren't tech savvy, can you just explain what a hackathon is?
Right, sure. So hackathon is basically you show up and you just write you the intention is that you write code, make a project in some short time span, like 24 hours, for example, and you just pull an all-nighter, you work on this project. Hopefully at the end of it, you have something to show for it. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you'll win a prize off of that. Sometimes some people turn their hackathon projects into, companies, and then like that's their start. I think, don't quote me on this. I think Dropbox was started at a hackathon. Now it's a multi-million dollar company. Sometimes you get nothing done and you put it on your GitHub and you hide it away, pretend it doesn't exist.
As
So
long as you can
any
talk
range
about
of
it, right?
yeah.
So I guess other than like hackathon projects, like I know we talked about this in school. You had a lot of internships. Could you talk more about that as well?
Yeah, I had 3 internships. My first one was at BrainLink International, working for a man named Raj. And Raj was the owner of this company that would basically do, I believe it was security consulting. Yeah. So I didn't do anything like that. He had me write plugins for Confluence, part of the Atlassian suite, along with like Jira and stuff like that. Basically, I wrote some plugin for him in Java. It wasn't that interesting, but I had insight into like the business world. Someone giving me spec, I write code, I go back to them, we iterate back and forth. So that was interesting. I was severely underpaid because I didn't realize how much I could ask for, but that's okay. Um,
It
my
was
second
more about the
internship,
experience.
exactly. That's right. I was paid in experience. That's invaluable. No.
He's like, nah.
It's real nice, let me tell you. So my second internship was with Bloomberg. Once again, I didn't really work on the Bloomberg platform. I made an app for my mentor that would generate dashboards based on his Git progress. So just kind of aggregate all that data together and create a graph to show kind of how much did you work on, how many lines of code did you touch over time, all that fun stuff. There's a whole command line tool that he hooked into his day-to-day workflow. My third internship was with MongoDB. Once again, did not work on the platform. I wrote that's a common theme. I don't know why that happened, but I think that hindered my career a little bit. I can go back to that if you want me to. But what I did work on is an interactive disassembler because my mentor was part of the optimization team. So he would do like very, very small level, very low level optimization, like cut out cycles out of the project. So having a disassembler that you can interact with was really important to him. So that's what I did.
Really low level programming.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about like milliseconds or less than milliseconds, honestly.
Microseconds, nanoseconds.
Yeah, microseconds.
Yeah, but those nanoseconds add up, so actually, it matters.
They do. Millions of operations, which is a cool field in itself. I guess since you brought it up, like, why do you think I guess not working on the main platform kind of hindered you? Like, these are pretty big name companies, and a lot of people would like want to have an internship there. So I guess elaborate on that.
So I think hindered is the wrong word. It's not like it had a negative impact, right? Like obviously interning at MongoDB, just having the name on my resume is a good thing. But I didn't get to learn what it was like to work on like an industry code base, which I think is really important. Because I show up at Google, we have an enormous code base, literally billions of lines of code. I'm kind of just trying to figure my way through it all. Never done anything like that before. Instead of working on standalone projects, I think if I'd learned what it was like to work A, with a team, B, with industry professionals, and C, with a live code base, that would have been a lot more important. That would have been a lot more impactful for me.
I actually like that answer a lot because, as you said it, even though you had those brand names that you could have on paper, it doesn't necessarily mean that you had the skills that you would have liked to have once you got your job. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, it's great to be able to say that, yeah, I worked at Bloomberg, but once you get a job because of that, you quickly realize that, hey, if you actually develop more skills and like really made the most of your time, it would help you a lot in the like moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I definitely learned a lot on those projects, right? I was able to learn from my mentor. I learned skills specific to those projects. But just to reiterate, it would have been nice to learn like the industry, like the general industry skills.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess is that something like people when looking at internships should kind of like seek out for, or like I guess maybe was there any opportunities for you to kind of like bring that up to your mentor and like kind of take on extra responsibility, or was that really an option?
Yeah, I think it was. Well, at Bloomberg, no, not really, because actually, now that I think about it, probably, yeah. I had 12 weeks of my internship, and the way it worked was basically, Dan, I want this feature. I deliver the feature. Here's this other feature. I deliver another feature. Kind of go back and forth. At no point was there a clear end. So at any point, I really could have said, hey, this is cool and all, but I want to know what are you working on? I want to see what you're working on and learn from that. Same with my internship in MongoDB. Although that one was kind of with the expectation that is my intern project, right? I signed up for that project, not realizing, like in hindsight, if I'd known I'd feel this way, I would have picked a different project. But that was my expectation. I did get a chance to work on one ticket while I was there before, like in the first week. But if I were more vocal, maybe. My mentor did ask me, is there anything you want to get from this internship? I didn't know how to answer that. So I was like, no, just give me stuff and I'll learn.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to kind of like connect the dots.
Like you don't
So
know what you don't know.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So now knowing what you do know, what would you advise someone who was in a similar situation as you when they were early in their internship career?
I think so for me personally, I I'm very, very close with my mentor at work. I still have a mentor unofficially, but there is someone at my job who I ask a lot of questions to because he's more experienced and smarter than me. And it's important to have. I think it's important to have that, especially early on in your career. Just ask as many questions as possible. That's how you learn. That's like a good way to learn. Someone who knows more than you will be able to fill in those blanks for you. So that's the first thing. Ask a lot of questions. The other thing is if you know, I mean, this is kind of obvious, but if you know what it is you want to work on, or if you know what it is you're lacking in skill, be vocal about that. I know for a lot of people, it's not easy to ask questions and be vocal, but like once you realize that like there's no one is ever gonna think less of you for asking a question, right? In fact, on my 3 of my last 4 performance reviews, in the positive comments, my people have written asks a lot of good questions, right? People would rather have an employee who asks questions
Hmm.
than like pretends to know or like doesn't try to learn, right? Because if you don't try to learn, you stay in the same spot, right? If you ask a lot of questions, you're learning, you're growing, and you're getting better. So that's kind of my best advice for someone who already has an internship and wants to get the most out of it.
It's pretty solid advice, and it's not even just like the tech industry. Honestly,
Yeah.
any internship you can learn something, and it's really about being proactive.
Yeah. And like on that, you like use that word proactive at Google, the kind of the trademark of each level is kind of your how proactive you are, or at least part of it.
Hmm.
So for example, when you're first starting out, you're not really expected to be proactive. You're handed a task and you do it and say thanks, boss, and you keep going. Um, for the next level, you're kind of expected to identify places where you can do a little bit of extra work, or like say like, oh, this is something that I can improve, like this like small library or feature, like I can work on that. Let me do that. And then the next level past that is like, oh, we need like this tool or this entire product to, not really product. We need like this tool or this library to make things work, and you like do that a whole bunch of times. The level after that might be like, hey, we need a product. Sundar, I think, proposed Google Chrome. Like that's why he is the man, right? That's why he makes like $1 billion because he had an idea and someone liked it and he was proactive, right? And again, it's
Let's
not
make a web
easy.
browser
Yeah,
by Google.
exactly. Like again, it's not easy, but like that's why people get promoted and they get paid more money when they do finally get to that point. Like that's the point you want to be at, where you're proactive and you're achieving these grander goals and you're going a step above where you're expected to be. And like this is all kind of obvious advice, but like it's not obvious. Like you don't really think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty clear cut, but and it's easy on paper, but
Exactly.
hard to yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was helpful to anybody, but I hope it was.
No, I think this is I think a lot of people, even if they're not specifically looking for a tech job or to work at Google, they can definitely extrapolate that idea and realize that, hey, if I am more valuable and go out of my way to add more value, I can definitely move up, like you said. And I really like the way you broke it down in like a kind of like a ladder structure, where the expectation rises as your job responsibility, title, salary rises.
Exactly. Yeah. It sometimes feels a little backwards, but I like the way it works at Google, where in order to get to the next level, You have to be doing work at the next level for a while. And then you put on your performance review like, hey, I've been doing this work. This is next level work. This is why I deserve to be promoted, right? Because otherwise, no one's just going to hand you the next level, right? I forgot the name of it. I think it might have been actually just called the manager paradox, where it's like you promote someone because they're doing a good job, right? But then they get to the next level, they've never done that job, so they fail at it. So why did you promote them? Because they were doing the previous level's work, but that doesn't correlate, right? Did that make any sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I think
that's just like a catch-20, honest. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, it sounds like, just because you're necessarily great at level 1, you're not necessarily going to be a proficient at level 2, because sometimes the work is not exactly translatable. That's cool, man. So moving off internships, when did you first start going from looking for internships to looking for your full-time job?
I started looking for a full-time job like October of my senior year, like pretty early into the year. Like I took a month, like whatever was it, September. I kind of just chilled back. I was like, I don't need to start looking. And then applications were already closing for some places, I think, or people were already starting to apply. And I was like, oh, this is really competitive. I should, get on that.
Gotcha. One thing we like to do is just dig into people's processes. So how did you actually go about applying? Because I know that you mentioned that you got a referral to Google. How were your how's your approach to targeting other companies?
Yeah, so I mean, the best advice, well, at least for me, this is again something really obvious, but you have to kind of pinpoint what it is that you are looking for. For me specifically,
Mhm.
it was important to be in New York and work on a company. This is really pretentious of me, but it's important to work on a product that people knew, right? I didn't want to work on like I wanted to like go to parties and be like, yeah, I work at YouTube. That was kind of
The subtle flex,
No, that's
honestly.
fair. That's fair. A lot
just a
of
little
people
bit.
wouldn't admit it, but it's true.
The
Yeah,
clout, tech
yeah.
bro clout.
But yeah, different people have different different priorities. But for me, I would literally just like look up tech companies in New York, and then go down the list. And there's tons of lists. There's like Angel List, which I think is for startups. There's like Glassdoor, which is for companies in general. There's tons and tons of lists where you can go to find companies. And it's a grind, honestly. You just go down these lists, applying to every company that checks all the boxes, or sometimes even most of the boxes. Because eventually you go through all the companies that check all the boxes, and you're out of companies. So you lower the bar a little bit, and you start applying again, and you lower the bar a little bit more, and you keep applying, and you keep going until eventually there's a match.
So I guess in the end of all your interviews, I mean, like, sure, Google's a great company, but I'm sure you got into a lot of other great companies. So
Nah, not quite.
was it just Google and then it's like, yeah, peace, I'm good.
Honestly, yeah, that was basically it. Like I applied to a bunch of companies. I got an interview from Two Sigma that didn't pan out. And I was left with one offer.
Okay, so needless to say, not that hard to pick your offer. How's your experience with interviews, both culturally and coding interviews?
What do you mean by culturally?
Like
Like fuck,
the
what's
HR interviews,
Oh,
yeah, like HR
like
interviews.
culture
Yeah.
fit. Yeah,
right.
culture
Sorry,
fit.
what was the question?
So, like, what was your experience like in those? Like, did you have any particular struggles in those, or like, was it kind of like once you do one, you've kind of seen everything?
I wouldn't say once you've seen one, but once you've done a bunch of them, you do get a lot more comfortable. Like my first ever technical interview was with Facebook, and I bombed that so bad. It was like I still think about that. Like, you ever just like late at night, you think about like
It
the
just
embarrassing.
haunts you.
Yeah, like you ever think about like the text you sent your crush in like middle school? Like I think about the interviews, the Facebook interview that I had, in freshman year of college. Um,
Oh
but
god.
like one of the things I tell people though is like like what I just said, that getting practice makes it a lot easier. You gain the confidence, which helps a lot. You're not like sitting there panicking like I was. The other thing with technical interviews specifically, is that it's kind of like the SATs in that there's kind of a bank of questions, like core questions, and then there's different ways to reword them or restructure them, or like a twist you put on it. And once you find that twist, once you found that twist, and once you know how to solve the core problem, you've solved the problem. So the approach to technical interview prep is to basically do all of those interview questions, right? Is to just practice so many interview questions that once you see one, you can recognize it and be like, oh, I know how to do this one. And for that, I use LeetCode. Um, I don't work for LeetCode. I'm not trying to like sponsor them or plug them in any way, but
It's
I
just a
literally,
useful tool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just grinded LeetCode for like 2 months, fiending interview questions. And then eventually I was really, really comfortable with them. I showed up to the interview and it was good enough, right? And it
Yeah,
being,
and it
sorry.
yeah, and in addition to that, I guess another resource to check out for anyone that's also looking at coding interviews is also something like Cracking the Code Interview by Gail McDowell.
Yep.
And in addition, also doing like coding interviews with your peers, because typically you can grab a leak code question and do it by yourself, but it's a lot more different when you're presented the question and then a friend of yours will kind of like walk you through the interview, similar to how a real interview process would go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like completely forgot about that, but it's very different when you're sitting at your computer, clicking, typing code, thinking to yourself, versus talking to a human being, right? Even if you're talking through yourself at your computer, you still can't have a conversation with yourself. If you have someone, right? Like obviously,
Yeah.
like if you have someone to sit there, like a peer to mock interview you, they can give you, they can talk back to you, they can ask you questions, they can answer questions. It'll actually feel like an actual interview, and that's extremely important.
Definitely. I guess I'm a little curious. So, like, what is your favorite part, and I guess what's your least favorite part about working at
Oh man, you wanna hear about the perks, don't you? That's what you think I'm gonna say.
Google? The free cafeteria food.
The food's not that great.
The
You heard it here
secret pods. The
No.
huge campus.
Yeah, I work in a pretty small campus, so I don't have that either. But and I think my favorite part of working at Google is probably honestly how lax the company is. Um, just because like, there's no, I've never really felt the pressure and the stress to grind out, to get work done on like a tight schedule, like if I was at a startup, right? I don't really want to spend my years slaving away to a corporation that doesn't care about me. So that's one of the nice things about Google. Uh, my least favorite part of Google is probably the scale and the bureaucracy, and how kind of difficult it is to like get things done as opposed to like another company. So for example, if I want to okay, a very basic example. If I want to submit code, I need to get three types of review. I need to get someone to review the code and be like, yes, this is fine code. I need to get an owner of the file to approve that, which is usually pretty easy if you're just working within your own team. You need to have someone who has readability for that language. That was the annoying one. You need to have someone who is certified in that language to be like, yes, these are this adheres to the style guide. And that's really annoying when you're just trying to get code out the door. You need to stop and like you have to find someone. They have to find time in their schedule. They have to read your code, respond to your code. You have to respond to them. They have to respond to you. You go back and forth. All I wanted to do was make a change, like fix my bug. Like this turned into a week-long project because of bureaucracy. And a lot of it is for good reason. Like that one is to make sure your code base is healthy. That's noble. That's a noble goal. Then there's things like security and privacy, right? There was an example of a guy who read Google data and used it to stalk his ex-girlfriend. That's scary. That's
super creepy. Wait,
yeah,
what?
That's terrible. So now we're not allowed to just like read sensitive data, right? You can only machines can read sensitive data now. So in order to read that data, I have to write code. I have to launch like a job that just like does the job, right? I can't go into the data and say I'm looking for this line or like this key. And again, that's a good reason, but it's really frustrating when I'm just trying to, like test my project. I can't just test it with the data. I have to launch it and hope that it works.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, that sounds like it's just a kind of a cost that you have to bear to be at such a big company where there's like a lot at stake. So it makes sense, even though it's like you said, for on a personal micro level, it does sound pretty frustrating. Gotcha. Okay, so now speaking of things you like, things you don't like, what's your work-life balance like?
It's good. I show up at 10 a.m. I leave around 6 p.m. I rarely take my work home with me. There was like one stretch where I had to meet not even like a work deadline. I had to meet like an EU deadline, right, for GDPR. I had to like that's not something I can negotiate. I'm not gonna knock on the EU's door and be like, hey, give me another week, right? So like aside from that like extreme case, I don't take my work home with me.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So what do you like to do outside of work?
What I like to do outside of work? Ooh. I climb. I boulder. I go to bouldering gym. I try to climb 3 times a week. I probably climb like a week and a half on average, but I do like doing that. I like to bake. I started baking with my girlfriend. We do something new every week. It's a lot of fun.
Cute.
Yeah. Just like everyone else, I like to watch anime and play video games. I'm playing Luigi's Mansion 3 right now. Yeah. And there was something else. What else do I like to do? Oh, I like to play board games. I used to play like board games like 3 times a week. I've cut that back because I wanted more time for anime and video games.
Nice. Prioritizing. That's good.
Exactly.
That's good.
But I'm trying to get back on. I'm trying to play more board games again. Yeah. I have a group.
The old days.
Yeah. I have a group of friends actually from high school that are all out here. We meet up on Fridays and we play board games.
That's really cool, man.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
So I guess another thing. So you didn't end up in New York, right? So so I guess for someone that is like didn't get the location that they wanted, right? Like how did you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, so to start, what happened with that is that the New York office was full. It still is very overcrowded. So they told me like, look, we can't put you in the New York office, but we can put you in the Bay Area, and after a year you can transfer out if you want to. I was like, okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
reasonable. I'll work for Google for a year, no problem. And originally I was very excited to explore a new world, make new friends, all that fun stuff. And when I got there, I was immediately like very shook, right? It was really hard because it was my first time like really being away from home and away from friends, right? In college, I dormed, but I was still 2 hours away from home. And I was with a lot, like I lived with people and I had friends and I had classmates, and it's a lot easier than moving and being alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really lonely for a while, and it was really tough. It was really stressful. I was lonely all the time. I really hated it, and it had a toll on my mental health, and B, my perception of San Francisco. I was telling people, San Francisco sucks. I hate this place. There's nothing good about this place. But really, it was me, like projecting onto my location. I've spoken to other people that have moved to brand new locations. I don't know like to what degree the other people have experienced it, but in general, yeah, the first 6 months when you move to a new place is really hard. That said, after about 6 months, it kind of grew on me. I have friends. Like I said, I have my board game group. I go climbing with a couple of friends. I have a girlfriend, and so I made the most of it. Now having like a clear head, um, I'm still not crazy about San Francisco, um, but it's not because I'm lonely, right? Now like
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different now. That said, like despite like how awful of a time I had, I do think it was really important for me to go and do that because I was able to really grow and mature. I was able to, you know, learn more about myself and my, like really self-reflect and, think about like my flaws and all that. I got into, I fixed up like my style. I was forced to go out and really meet new people. So what I did was I started saying yes to everything. Have you ever seen that movie Yes Man? That's literally what I did. That's how I discovered climbing, right? A friend of mine was like, hey, I'm going climbing. I have a guest pass. Do you want to come with me? Like old Dan would have been like, fitness, exercise. That's not me. You go have fun. But I said yes, and I enjoyed it. And now I've been climbing for a year and a half. I just did a competition over the weekend.
Wow.
So
Congrats. Yeah,
thank
that's
you. I mean,
awesome.
well, I never said I won. I did horribly.
Well,
I
I
competed.
mean, competition's competition, yeah.
That's true.
You,
Yeah, you kind of jumped
I'll
the
give
gun
you a
there, Alex.
participation trophy.
Thanks. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So yeah, so bottom line, if given the opportunity, I recommend going somewhere new, like anywhere new, even like Detroit, I don't know, or Kansas, maybe not Kansas. Like trying somewhere new and like having that experience just to grow, I think is super, super valuable.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Totally
I
agree.
totally agree, and I'm glad to hear that things have turned around since.
The
Thanks.
first 6 months.
So actually, how long have you been out there?
Like a
Ooh,
little over 2 years.
A little over 2 years. Gotcha.
Wow, yeah, that's about as long as I've been in LA. I've my experience is kind of similar. Yeah, kind of similar. Moved out from New York, didn't know anyone, and the thing that I thought was really poignant is that you really do have a mirror that you look right into your own soul, and you have to really like reevaluate yourself. And definitely being alone for the first time does uh, expose you to things that, like you mentioned, you just don't get it back in your comfort zone.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like it's very like honestly very spiritual. Like you don't think it would be, but all that time you spend with yourself, you learn a lot about yourself.
Dan, do you have any like closing advice for anyone that's watching the podcast?
Closing remarks.
Well, first of all, I don't speak for my company, so anything I said is my own opinion, not my company's. Don't, none of this is court of law, etc. Just for the whole podcast as a whole.
So, well, I'll throw that in near the beginning, so no one no one gets anything twisted.
Perfect.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, just disclaimer. General advice. I honestly think all of the advice, like the career advice and life advice, has already come up. In terms of how to grow in your career, how to like grow personally was the two big things. I also think it's very important to remember that your career is not your life, and that you shouldn't let it take a hold of yourself. So obviously, like if you're working more than 60 hours per week is obscene. More than 40, if that's your comfort zone, then sure. But for many people, I'm sure that's not okay. So make sure you're taking care of yourself and your mental health. And if you're ever feeling thoughts of depression or suicide, reach out to those around you for assistance, and don't be afraid to speak up.
Thanks, Dan.
No problem. I care about you guys.
We care about you too, and everyone watching this podcast.
Well, it's been a really fun time talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Dan.
This is so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And with that, everyone who's watching, thanks for joining us today, and we will sign off and see you soon.
See you next time. Peace.